Hello, my name is Yukabeth Okega, a mid-level data analyst passionate about diving into project details and analyzing its data. I'm proficient in MySQL, Python, Power BI, and Git. In this project, I'm going to do an analysis on COVID data. The data was obtained from World Health Organization. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to auto-adjust the columns to match the size of the titles, and I use the keyboard shortcuts Alt, H, O, and I. After that, I'm going to filter out the data you select everything, go to data, and then filter out the content. So as you can see, it's a table on COVID deaths. It has several rows and several columns. It contains information about infections during the COVID times, people who died, and their locations. So the first thing I did was create tables in MySQL using the create table command. I created two tables, the COVID deaths and COVID vaccinations table. The COVID deaths table looked like this. As you can see, it has several columns and several rows. It had information about the population, the new cases, the total number of people who have died, the new deaths. And for the COVID vaccination table, it contained also information about people who had been vaccinated, their location, their continent, new tests, and all that information. So these are the commands I used to create the tables. As you can see, I have the columns and the data types for all the columns that were in the Excel table. And then before transferring the data, I used the show variable like secure file priv. This was to help me know the directory where MySQL can read files from for importing the data using the load file command. After that, I transferred the data. Before that, I had to handle nulls because some of the columns in the table had nulls, and I used the null if function. This was to make sure I transfer data without any empty rows. After that, after transferring all the data, I created the COVID vaccinations table again. As you can see, I have the columns and their data types. I also did the same thing in transferring the data, made sure I handled the nulls, and then using the load data in file, I transferred the data to the COVID vaccinations table. So I also handled nulls. And then after that, now I started doing the analysis. As you can see, I've written several queries to help me explore the data, help get more information about the data before I could continue to the next steps. Like for example, as you can see here, I did a query for calculating the total cases versus the total deaths in US. As you can see, I had specified the location to be specifically for US, and you can see the total cases, the total deaths. If you scroll down, you can see, for example, here, there were 107 total cases and 11 deaths, leading to 10% death percentage. So through such exploration, you get to understand your data before doing further analysis. I also did like countries with the highest infection rates compared to their population. This was to help know the countries that were most affected by the virus. As you can see, the first country was in Europe, Andorra, with a percentage population infection of almost 17%. That is quite high. I also did more exploration, like analysis by continent, global numbers. So for global numbers, I was getting the total infection, total deaths for the whole world without considering the location. So for like this, if you scroll down in the table below, you can see, for example, here there were like 184 total cases with 12 deaths, which translated to 6.5% in death percentage in like the whole world without segmenting into different locations. So I did more exploration in the vaccination table. I used CTEs, which are common table expressions. I also used temporary tables. From the exploration, I was able to examine the raw data and understand its structure. I was able to familiarize myself with the data types. I identified data quality issues like missing values, and I detected relationship between COVID vaccinations and COVID deaths. So I can do good analysis. If you need help with data analysis, feel free to reach out.